Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking into Bob Camblin. He's this artist often called iconoclastic and enigmatic.
Mm-hmm. And his work, it's really respected by people who know it, collectors love it, but yeah, he's not really a household name.
Right, and when his art does pop up, it fetches, pretty high prices and then vanishes again.
Exactly. So what we want to do here is sort of shed some light on his world, his mind, using the stuff you, the learner, brought us.
Yeah, we've got his own words, bits from a biography, reviews, even a YouTube description.
It's quite a mix. Quotes, life details, critical takes, that evocative video description.
So the idea is to kind of piece together his unique perspective on art, life, the whole creative process, for you, the learner, looking for those insights, those aha moments.
We'll try to give a good overview, balancing the big picture with some, memorable details from the sources without it getting too overwhelming.
Okay, so where do we start? His beginnings.
Makes sense. He was born in Oklahoma in 1928.
And art was in the family, right? Both parents were artists,
Yeah, so he was around it from the start. He was even art director for his high school yearbook.
which was in Ponca City, Oklahoma. What was that like back then?
Well, think 1930s, 40s, pre-TV dominance, radio wasn't everywhere, and it was the time of the big Marland estate, the oil money.
Ah, right. The rise and fall story.
Exactly. And interestingly, the biography mentions the pioneer woman statue there, commissioned by Marland.
Okay.
Apparently, it subtly shows up in Camblin's later work, maybe like a nod to his mother, Viva, who is an artist too, a visual link back to his youth.
Wow, those early influences sticking around. And speaking of powerful visuals, The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, yeah. Huge impact on his imagination. Imagine seeing that Technicolor marvel back then.
Must have been mind-blowing.
Totally. And it wasn't just movies. He had this really long friendship over 60 years with Forrest Harrisberger.
From high school art class, yeah.
Their bond seemed pretty strong. They even ended up serving together later.
Right, Air Force Reserve during the Korean War. Though they didn't see combat, thankfully.
But that service had a silver lining.
The GI Bill.
Exactly. It let both of them attend the Kansas City Art Institute, a big step for Camblin's art education.
And even then, he was apparently always reading, right? Even in class.
Yeah, Harrisberger remembered that Camblin was just soaking things up. Emerson, the I Ching, haiku, haiga.
You can sort of see the seeds there, can't you? That interest in finding something deep in simple forms, like haiku.
Definitely foreshadows his later ideas about everyday enlightenment. But first, Italy.
The Fulbright Scholarship, that must have been transformative.
Absolutely. He traveled a lot, was just mesmerized, his word, by the old masters, the Impressionists.
And Venice, especially.
Venice was huge for him. He called it his real-life Emerald City Oz. It really captured his imagination.
It wasn't just the famous stuff, though, was it? The biography mentions some other key places.
Right, like the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, obviously, but also the Capuchin Catacombs in Palermo.
That's quite a contrast. Renaissance masterpieces and, well, mummies.
Exactly. And both fed into his art. The catacombs inspired these abstract figures he called mummies. Shows that long fascination with mortality, the human form.
You even see direct references later, don't you? Like his take on Botticelli's Birth of Venus.
Yeah, but with a twist, a mention of KPFT radio in Houston.
It's so Camblin, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mixing the classic with the contemporary, the local.
Totally. Grounding this epic Renaissance theme with something specific to his Houston audience, that community radio vibe, making it relevant.
In Primavera, Botticelli's other big one.
That inspired his masked Flora painting, and apparently it's full of hidden stuff.
Like what?
The biography mentions things like hearts, electrons, even a haiga hidden in there, plus that sort of Mona Lisa smile. It just makes you want to look closer,
Definitely. So he comes back from Italy.
Yeah.
What's next? Making a living.
Yeah, the practical side. He actually worked as a map maker for TWA for a bit.
A map maker, huh?
But teaching was clearly the pull. He taught at Ringling, Illinois, Wayne State, and Detroit, Utah.
And then Rice University in Houston.
And Houston seemed to be a better fit for him artistically. The biography suggests he felt more accepted by galleries and collectors there compared to Salt Lake City anyway.
But he had a complicated view of the whole art world, didn't he? The art game. Selling work.
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes refused payment, apparently. And he had really strong opinions on how art should be shown.
Like the artist should control the whole space.
Yeah, and don't just hang it chronologically in a retrospective. Let the viewer connect directly, minimize the distractions. He wanted the art first.
It shows a real commitment to the experience itself, beyond just the object or the money.
And he believed in, like, faith and just doing good work as anchors in art, he had this idea turning stumbling blocks into stepping stones.
which he painted as jars of water.
Yeah, letting the sediment settle so you can see clearly. It's a good visual metaphor for dealing with challenges.
That is potent. Then there's the Scarecrow series,
Mhm.
inspired by a novel.
Günter Grass's Dog Years. Complex book.
And the scarecrows themselves, they weren't straightforward either.
No. The biography suggests maybe they started as symbols of spring renewal from folklore, but then they evolved.
How so?
He started adding things like lobster shells, larva shells, suggesting myths, metamorphosis, transformation. They became these layered symbols.
And later he even called them sculptures, which changes how you think about them, and the text he used in drawings.
Right. Not for explanation, more like disguise or clues. He was questioning how much words should dictate how we see art.
Like Tom Wolfe's The Painted Word idea.
Exactly. He saw the text as shapes, visually, invited you to find your own meaning. He even put in extra data problems, he called them.
Codes and traps to make the viewer work for it.
Yeah, to make you an active participant, not just looking passively.
He had this big ambition too, didn't he, to remake Goya in 20th century terms.
Yeah, using surprise, weird juxtapositions, non sequiturs,
Yeah.
trying to tap into the subconscious, get those deeper emotional reactions, like Goya did with the darker stuff.
His early work even tackled social protest themes, reflecting the times.
It did, but then he started blending that social realism with non-objective art, pure form and color, to create these subjective symbols, influenced by artists like Cremoni and even old Etruscan figures.
And drawing wasn't just sketching for him, it was major.
Huge, large-scale drawings, as important as paintings, often showing the corrections white paint bits of paper stuck on, like in The Descent from the Cross.
Which was deeply personal, about perseverance.
Seems so. And in the 60s, he was trying to mash up the poetry of Hugo van der Goes with Goya's emotional punch.
Even the materials aging became part of the art, like paper yellowing.
Yeah, in works like A Series of Masks, it adds the subtle layering, the sense of time. He was really thinking about every detail, even how his colors worked across paintings and drawings.
Then in the 80s, this Muchas Volantes style appears. Lots of dots and dashes,
Often working with Nancy Giordano, it created these optical illusions.
a bit like Escher. Or Dali.
Kind of, yeah, playing with perception. But it wasn't just a trick. Your eye actually had to work to make sense of the dots, to see the image. It pulls you in.
Very interactive.
And his later stuff, like the Big Owl series or revisiting Descent from the Cross, just shows his continued skill, that unique symbolic language he developed.
So looking back at all this, you start to see these recurring ideas, these philosophies bubbling up.
Definitely. There was that book review asking, what is art but a series of questions disguised as images?
And philosophy tries to give incomplete answers. I like that. Art asks, philosophy tries to answer.
Sort of.
It feels very Camblin. Art is inquiry, not statement.
And he could take something totally normal, like a trap, and make it mean so much more.
Right. That figure 4 trap becomes about being stuck. A tattooed arm hints at family secrets. Even a frog becomes this symbol of Zen stillness.
Transforming the ordinary.
And using paradox. The review mentioned traps that do not trap, structures that do not move. His sketches weren't just drawings, they were blueprints for ideas, making you think about these contradictions. He explored illusion too, didn't he? Vanishing acts, things binding themselves.
And the whole idea of traps, fear, time, the ones we make, the ones the world makes. Telling stories about who sets them, escapes them, or never even sees them.
It's quite evocative. He also seemed interested in stillness, didn't he? In a world that's always moving.
Yeah, that power of contemplation versus constant action. And his art seemed to want to bypass the usual art criticism, the market, aiming for something more direct, soul to soul, maybe.
The biography mentioned collaboration too, signing works as anonymous artists.
Which is interesting, right? Downplaying the individual ego, focusing on the art itself, maybe the collective act of creating.
Yeah, less about the star artist.
And maybe the biggest theme woven through it all is this idea of everyday enlightenment.
Finding beauty in weird places.
Yeah.
Humor in decay. Accepting that things don't last.
Exactly. The reviews talk about his art almost like mindfulness practice, a way to meditate on the world.
That connects with his own quotes, like finding completion in nature. Just doing your best work. The light is all you need. Simple but profound ideas.
Yeah, finding clarity in ordinary moments. The review put it nicely. Enlightenment isn't some endpoint, it's ongoing. Found in stillness, humor, curiosity, even confusion.
So after this long career, building these ideas. He makes a big change in 1976.
A huge change. He leaves academia, becomes nomadic, basically, just lives for his art.
Funding it how? Selling work.
Sales and commissions while traveling. Italy, France, Ireland, Mexico, the South Pacific. Really committing to an art-centered life on his own terms.
And during this time, he was working on very personal stuff, drawings and writings.
Yeah, stuff from 1950 to 1974 that he apparently never meant anyone else to see, like a private journal, raw thoughts and feelings.
Then he comes back to the U.S. Things change again.
Divorce, a more solitary life. He set up the studio, his wizard's den, filled with collected objects, curiosities.
That sounds like him. And the Mr. Peanut persona started then, signing things anonymous.
Seems so, like a deliberate retreat into his own world. He eventually moved to Oregon, then Louisiana with his wife Nancy. Became more withdrawn from his old Houston friends.
It sounds quite isolating.
Yeah, there's a story about him visiting his dying friend Joe Tate, but feeling uncomfortable and leaving quickly. Maybe revisiting the past was hard.
And efforts to get him a big museum show in Houston didn't pan out.
Sadly, no, despite support. There was a small show in a frame shop later, after he'd had a stroke, to help raise money for care.
Well, that's tough.
And then, as his friend Earl Staley noted, he passed away on December 3rd. The end of a really unique artistic journey.
Now, that YouTube video description you mentioned, The Tears of Venice, it really resonates with his themes, doesn't it?
It's beautifully written. Venice in a storm, but described like it's grieving. Heavens unburdened their grief. The city is ancient and fragile. Sets a real mood.
A melancholy beauty. It contrasts the usual purple canals, golden Paidy image with this shade of sorrow.
Mm-hmm. Gondolas become black petals on water, the wind weeping through the bridge of sighs, the air full of old regrets. It feels heavy.
Like the city itself is mourning.
And the rain is like gentle and persistent tears, revealing this vulnerability under the grandeur. There's that image of a lone person watching, feeling that same ache.
What connects that most strongly to Camblin for you?
I think it's the idea that cities like Venice can teach us how to mourn gracefully, letting memories ripple and blur but still be there. That sorrow isn't shame, but maybe a gift, a moment of grace.
Accepting impermanence again. Finding beauty even in sadness.
Exactly. It echoes that undercurrent in Camblin's work, the acceptance, the beauty and vulnerability.
And the end. The rain muffling the crying, becoming solace. Sorrow woven into time, tears adding salt to the sea.
It's incredibly poetic. It really captures that acceptance of cycles, beauty coexisting with decay, that everyday enlightenment idea we saw in the reviews of his work. A really fitting image to think about.
So wrapping up our dive into Bob Camblin, what are the big takeaways?
Well, he's clearly enigmatic, right? Always questioning art norms, exploring really deep themes, but often through accessible, if layered, images.
He loved paradox, didn't he? And showing how things connect in unexpected ways.
Absolutely. And ultimately, his art is like an invitation for you, the viewer, the learner, to look deeper, find your own meaning.
And his whole approach, his philosophy, it really speaks to that desire for knowledge, for those aha moments you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, his way of questioning, searching, it's a model for how we can engage with anything, really, not just art, but the world.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you, the learner.
Yeah.
Think about something ordinary in your life, an object, an experience, whatever.
What questions disguised as images might be hiding in it? Could you look at it with that Camblin spirit, curious, thoughtful, accepting? Maybe your own bit of everyday enlightenment is right there, waiting.